After a year of training in the hyperbolic time chamber, two Saiyans walk out vastly more powerful than before, but with very different approaches to surpassing the limits of Super Saiyan. One chose raw power, the other refined control. One reached a brand new transformation, and the other claims he found a better way, but in a straight up battle. Who actually has the edge here? Trunks believed his new form was enough to surpass even his own father, while Cell seemingly agreed that Trunks surpassed him at one point in time, while Goku calmly stood in his way. Is Grade 3's overwhelming power enough to take down Goku's calm and calculated strength, or does technique truly trump brute force? It was made known to us that no matter how strong you are, if you can't hit your opponent, then it doesn't matter. But what if we remove that kryptonite? What if Trunks was the same speed as Master Super Saiyan Goku? Would the outcome actually be different? It's in this video that we're going to remove that kryptonite from Grade 3, and ultimately answer this question. If you enjoy conversations like this and want to take part in deeper Dragon Ball discussions, I highly encourage you to join the Dragon Ball HQ Discord server, link below in the description. We'll be diving into this topic and more over there. Now, without further delay, let's begin. At one point during the Android and Cell saga, Korin offers his thoughts on Goku's strength relative to Perfect Cell, stating that even after Goku's intense training in the Room of Spirit and Time, Cell may still have the upper hand. This comparison, however, raises an interesting question. Which version of Cell is Korin even basing this on? Looking at the timeline, Korin will only be aware of two key instances: Cell's initial perfect form battle against Trunks, and then his likely powered up bulky transformation, the so-called power-weighted state Cell used to mock Trunks. It stands to reason that Korin's judgment will be drawn from one of those two displays. If we go by that logic, then full power Goku, the version that shows up at the Cell games, may not even be stronger than the Cell that fought Trunks. And interestingly enough, Cell himself once admitted that Trunks' Grade 3 transformation exceeds his own power. What's notable is how Cell phrases it. He simply says that Trunks' strength surpass his, with no qualifiers, like my current strength or in this state. It's a vague but potentially meaningful remark. Perhaps Cell was referencing his true power, not just his suppressed output at the time. That being said, there's a wrinkle in that theory. When Goku shows off just 50% of his power during the Cell games, even the seasoned fighters watching are stunned. There's a strong implication that Goku's power at half capacity is beyond anything we've seen, including Trunks' Grade 3 state. Then again, that form is incredibly inefficient. Raw strength doesn't always translate to better performance. Goku's base Super Saiyan state may simply have a better balance, which creates a more lasting impression than Trunks' brute force approach. Adding to the ambiguity is a comment Goku makes after briefly meeting Cell before the tournament begins. He notes that Cell still has untapped potential, and when he really decides to fight seriously, his strength could skyrocket. Trunks responds with disbelief, suggesting that Cell's true depth hasn't even been glimpsed yet. This works as a kind of narrative safety net, Toriyama leaving the door open for Cell's power to grow as much as the story needs, even if it conflicts slightly with prior showings. And just to complicate things further, during Goku's full power reveal at the Cell games, Krillin is shown commenting that Goku has gone beyond all of us. That line never made it into the anime, which is curious considering how much additional material Z usually included. But in the manga, it's a subtle confirmation that Goku's true strength at the moment might have eclipsed any prior benchmark, including even Grade 3 Trunks or Perfect Cell's earlier display. So while Korin's estimate might have been accurate at the time, the ever-evolving nature in Dragon Ball means it was probably outdated the moment Goku stepped into the ring. When it comes to sorting out the power scale of the late Cell saga, few moments are as puzzling as the string of events surrounding Trunks' ascension and Goku's assessment of Cell. The way the characters talk about one another's strength seems to shift subtly over time, making it difficult to pin down a definitive chain of superiority. However, after digging into source material, this gives us a few major checkpoints worth organizing carefully. During the confrontation between Trunks and Perfect Cell after Vegeta is sidelined, Cell actually acknowledges Trunks' transformation with clear admiration. He outright states that Trunks possesses an astonishing level of power that easily exceeds his own. This sentiment is immediately echoed by Piccolo, who notes that Trunks' energy dwarfs Cell's. Trunks himself also hypes up this new form as his true potential, confirming it's the strongest he's been. But then Cell dismisses the form as ultimately ineffective, not because of power, but due to its structural limitations. The energy output is massive, but the speed and efficiency are compromised, which is a classic drawback of Ultra Super Saiyan, or Grade 3. Also, while Trunks might technically hit harder than Cell, the form isn't suitable for a prolonged, effective fight. Now, later on, Goku confronts Cell and seems taken back by how much Cell has evolved. He expresses uncertainty about his own chances, even admitting to Korin that Cell may be stronger than him. Korin, for his part, agrees, though he frames it as an educated guess rather than a fact. This exchange suggests that even Goku's complete mastery of Super Saiyan might not be enough against Cell's potential. Despite that, Goku unleashes his full power in front of the Z Warriors, and Krillin immediately acknowledges that Goku has become the strongest among them by a considerable margin. Gohan is less surprised, but even then he doesn't dispute the facts. So, now the question becomes, where does 100% Goku fall compared to Trunks' bulky grade 3 transformation? It really comes down to how much you weigh Cell's own statements. If we take him literally, then Trunks' raw energy is superior to Cell's peak output during the Cell games. But that doesn't necessarily mean Trunks will win in a real fight, especially when Cell later seems to be holding back reserves that not even Goku accounted for. In fact, Goku himself leaves the door open to the idea that Cell has more in store than anyone expects. And this gives us a few competing models for how the power chain plays out. Some interpret the progression like this. Final form Cell at full strength dominates. Then comes Cell's performance in his fight with Goku, followed by Goku's 100%, which exceeds 50% but still possibly falls short of Cell. Next is Trunks' grade 3, which boasts higher power but poor practicality. And finally, the early version of Cell that fought Trunks pre-Cell game. Alternatively, one could argue that Trunks' raw strength places him above Cell's current output at the time, but Cell's later boost bumps him past Trunks and Goku together. The main issue is that Trunks' form, though massive in output, is so inefficient that he couldn't capitalize on his own superiority in ki. In essence, if we strip away performance flaws and take raw numbers as our guide, Trunks might be ahead of 50% and even 100% Goku. But when we use form usability, stamina, and strategic edge that are factored in, Cell clearly holds the winning hand until Gohan takes the stage. The source dialogue supports a wide range of interpretations, but what's most clear is by the time that the Cell games begin, every fighter is aware that Cell still hasn't hit his ceiling, and that includes Goku. Trunks may have had the bigger punch in a vacuum, but Goku and Cell were the ones playing chess, not rock, paper, scissors.
Oh my god!
So when you're trying to line up who outclasses who, the best answer is it depends on whether you're talking about power on paper, power in motion, or power with purpose. When looking at Goku's performance leading up to the Cell games, there's a subtle but important moment where his power in relation to perfect cells is left ambiguous, and that ambiguity has fueled debates for decades. Korin makes a quiet observation. He believes Goku might not be able to surpass Cell even after mastering Super Saiyan, but what version of Cell is he even thinking of? At that point in the story, Korin's only frame of reference for Cell's strength would have come from the battle Cell had with Vegeta and Trunks, particularly the moment that Cell humiliated grade 3 Trunks' strength and effortlessly countered Vegeta. It's reasonable then that Korin might be estimating Goku's full power in comparison to what version of Cell, not the eventual Cell games variant, who might even be stronger. What's interesting is that we never get a clear declaration from anyone, Cell included, that he was holding back or hiding power during the Trunks fight. In fact, when Trunks powers up, Cell remarks that Trunks had actually surpassed him, which implies that Cell was fighting seriously at that moment. There's no hedging in Cell's comment and no qualifiers, just a straightforward admission. This adds weight to the idea that Trunks in sheer power output was ahead of Cell who fought him. But things get muddied when we examine Goku's later perspective. Later, during a quiet exchange with Trunks, Goku admits that even he has no clue how deep Cell's power really goes. He confesses that Cell may have reached levels that they didn't anticipate. This isn't a definitive claim that Cell was holding back, but more a reflection of uncertainty, something rare for Goku to express. In both the original manga and the anime versions, Kai and Z, the Japanese dialogue from Trunks translates to something like "I see" or "Is that so?" depending on the tone. It's not a shock reaction, more of a subdued acceptance. That tonality difference though is small but important. Trunks isn't reeling from disbelief, he's processing what Goku said quietly as if he's understanding the gravity of the situation without dramatics. Some fans interpret Goku's phrasing as confirming that Cell has a much higher ceiling, but linguistically his words are vague enough to leave room for interpretation. It's the kind of statement that suggests potential without asserting it outright. Goku is estimating, not revealing insider knowledge, and that vagueness is key. Goku wasn't present during the Cell vs Trunks fight, and he wasn't sensing Cell's energy directly outside the room of spirit and time. So his entire judgment of Cell's current strength is based on intuition and their belief face to face. That's not the same as verifying that Cell has new levels beyond anyone else is aware of. Interestingly, this also puts Goku's 50% showing into context. The Z fighters, particularly in the anime, acknowledge that Goku is holding back. Characters like Piccolo, Tenshinhan, and Trunks remark that Goku's display during his warm-up isn't the full extent of his power. It's a detail omitted from the manga, but the anime uses it to highlight Goku's true strength and is still an unknown even to his allies. There's also a subtle point here. Cell, like many of the Z fighters, has the ability to suppress his energy. There's no reason to assume he's walking around at maximum power while standing in the Cell game's ring. Just like Goku often hides his strength, so would Cell, especially given his Saiyan-inspired biology. This means that Goku's uncertainty about Cell's potential isn't just about what he felt, it's about what he couldn't sense at all. That takeaway from all this is that Goku's claim isn't necessarily saying Cell has greater power than what was used against Trunks, but rather Goku suspects Cell might even be more dangerous than previously shown. He's placing a bet based on Cell's demeanor, not evidence. In Trunks, he's not surprised. He's quietly absorbing that possibility. So if you're mapping out the Cell Saga scaling structure, the idea that 50% might already be beyond Grade 3 Trunks is still a reasonable interpretation, especially when you consider how the Z Fighters react to the power once the real battle begins. But you also can't say definitively that Cell was stronger than what he showed during the Trunks fight. At best, it's a question of potential, of whether Cell was simply holding something in reserve or whether Goku was just playing it cautiously. In short, Goku is not telling everyone Cell has more power than he's shown, he's saying I don't know how much more he could have. And in Dragon Ball, that little gap in certainty is often all the story needs to crank that power scale up by one more notch. During the lead up to the Cell games, we get a fascinating exchange among the Z Fighters that gives us a rare glimpse into their genuine uncertainty about how Goku stacks up against Perfect Cell. As Goku finishes off showing a fraction of his power during a sparring session with Gohan, his keys fell far from the others, and it leaves a strong impression. Tenshinhan's reaction is one of awe, immediately commenting on the sheer intensity of Goku's aura. But he doesn't go as far as to say Goku has outdone Trunks or Cell, just that it was an extraordinary display. Piccolo follows up with a sharp observation. Goku wasn't even at full strength yet. That was much clear to him, and even if that restrained level of energy was already so overwhelming, then what would Goku's true, unrestrained power look like? Trunks chimes in with a bit of cautious optimism. Based on what he sensed, he thinks Goku might be capable of winning against Cell. Not definitely and not no contest. It's a tempered, uncertain statement, one grounded in hope more than hard certainty. But the most telling response comes from Vegeta. His reaction isn't analytical, it's emotional. Once again, he feels left behind. He knows without even seeing Goku directly that his rival has taken yet another leap ahead. Vegeta's frustration underscores a recurring theme. No matter how far he pushes himself, Goku always somehow manages to stay in front. So how do we interpret these reactions? First, we need to consider what version of Cell everyone is thinking about when they make these evaluations. At the time, Cell had only fought Trunks using what appeared to be his full power. He didn't hint at any hidden reserves. So when Trunks gauges Goku's chances against Cell, he's likely basing it on that performance. The one from his own fight with Cell after Vegeta was sidelined. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Goku's ki as sensed by the others wasn't his full power. They didn't know it was only 50%. That lack of context is crucial. The Z Fighters are all reacting as if Goku had just shown most of his cards. They're impressed, even shaken, which implies they assume Goku is closer to full strength than he actually was, possibly somewhere in the 60 to 80% range if we're being generous. If Goku's actual output was lower than what they assumed, that means the gap between what they thought he could do and what he could actually do is far larger than it appeared. So by the time the Cell games arrived and Goku reveals what they sensed before was only half of his power, it's no wonder they were stunned. It's not a marginal difference, it's an emotional correction in their expectations. What this does is set an implicit ceiling for how strong Grade 3 Trunks was relative to Goku, since Trunks believed Goku had a real shot at winning, and Cell had not shown any significant increase in power since their fight. So then Goku must have been at least approaching that power level, and if he wasn't already being underestimated at 50%, then his 100% could have easily been on par or even higher than Grade 3 Trunks' raw output, just without the mobility drawbacks. In this way, Goku's composed Super Saiyan form wasn't just about efficiency or control, it was likely more powerful around him than people even realized. And that helps clarify why this calm demeanor at the Cell games came across as arrogant at first. In truth, it was confidence earned through his gap in strength that was bigger than anyone else predicted. On top of all the narrative implications, it seems that Cell and Goku alike also believed that he was the strongest against Cell, at least at that time. And later on, against Super Saiyan 2 suppressed Gohan, when Cell showed his true potential, everyone was surprised and thought Gohan was now in for trouble. And by that point, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan had displayed the most power we've shown in the series, even while he was suppressed. So it stands to reason that Cell actually had much more power and was holding back. All in all, Goku would win the matchup even if Grade 3 Trunks didn't lose his speed. The matter of the fact is that Goku in Grade 4 isn't just faster than Trunks, but stronger as well, making this matchup not even close.